Wouldn't it be crazy? Oh, don't you still amaze me?
What's up, guys? This is Better Than Static. I'm your host, Tyler, as usual, and I got my co-host, Lucas. Say hey, Lucas.
Hey, hey, Lucas.
Okay, Lucas, whatever. But, we're missing Chris this week, but don't worry. It's not just me and Lucas. We have a special guest, and his name is Patrick Hickey Jr. How's it going, Patrick?
What's up, guys? Happy to be here.
We're
Glad to have you.
Yeah. Lucas beat me to the punch. I was going to say the same thing. And guys, Patrick's pretty cool. He's a man of many talents. So we're gonna do an interview kind of similar to what we did with Brian Rodman when he was on the show, and Jordan when he's on the show. So we wrote some questions. I know we sound a little bit more professional than we are, but we're gonna roll through these questions and just kind of hang out with Patrick, get to know Patrick better, and so just hang out with us. So Patrick, we kind of talked about this. It says university professor on your bio, and what's really cool is you don't just teach, do you? What else? What is all that you do?
I think if I just taught, I'd have like suspenders and like a pocket protector and like 3 pairs of glasses with like transition lenses on one, and I can't do that. I've been teaching for about 12 years, but I've also been writing for a little bit longer. I was a former editor at NBC. I was a former national video games writer at Examiner. I'm a video game voice actor. I'm a video game writer, story writer. I'm also the author of The Minds Behind the Games, interviews with cult and classic video game developers, and I am the founder and editor-in-chief of ReviewFix.com. So, yeah, I'm a cool professor.
And
go
ahead, Lucas.
You've done 1 or 2 things.
Yeah, 1 or 2 things, and I'm just getting started, baby. Like,
I hear
it's
that.
like, yeah. So can't stop, won't stop. So.
I bet our audience is like, wow, how did they land this guy? Because he could do it all, guys. And like, we're gonna kind of just go through like each of like your many talents. You have a lot of them. We're gonna try to pick some of them and just go through them and kind of ask questions through that.
Yeah, great.
Is it cool if we start with your journalism background?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Let's do it.
Yeah, one thing that I really wanted to know more about was you do reviewfix.com. So is that the best place to find most of your reviews, or do you put them like in a podcast form or video form or anything like that?
I am a classically trained journalist. I have a master's degree in journalism. I'm a writer. I like talking. I like being on the radio. I have no problem like doing like Twitch and stuff like that. But for the most part, I am a writer. I'm also, I forgot to mention, a contributor to Old School Gamer magazine as well. So an excerpt from my book is going to be in the next issue. So like my interview with John Tobias from Mortal Kombat is going to be in the next issue. So that's going to be really cool. And then there's a couple of other little surprises that may get in there. So for the most part, yeah, Review Fix is like the place to go. Like if you want to read my stuff. I have 2 podcasts on there. Video podcasts. You don't see me because I'm usually nude when I do the podcast. But one is Gem or Junk, when I pick like just like a random game and I tell you if it's like a gem or a piece of basura, And then the other one is Flashback Friday, where I just pick something that I really enjoy. Like right now, I'm playing a lot of hockey games because hockey season is right around the corner. But like last month, I was playing like a lot of NFL games. So I was playing like Game Day '98, like the original Game Day on PlayStation, just having fun. So a little bit of video, a little bit of audio, but mostly written stuff. And yeah, ReviewFix.com and Old School Gamer. Old School Gamer, I write about 5 pieces a month for them. But like Review Fix, I mean, it's video games, comic books, professional wrestling, all sorts of stuff. Like I'm a madman. Like I'm always publishing stuff on there. We publish about like 7 pieces a day, and probably like 3 or 4 of them are mine.
Man, I love it. So much content for like just for especially for our audience, just to go and digest all that. I'm gonna go check some of it out. I know I've checked out like a bunch of it prior to the interview, but like I keep wanting to go. You guys do really good reviews, and I want to keep reading some more of those on like games and comics that I'm thinking about reading or thinking about playing. And I think like Review Fix and is just a great place for that, because it kind of gives you a taste before you play the game.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's like I have 4 or 5 really good video game critics writing for me as well, and it's like I cherry picked them. I'm a college professor, so It's like there's not a lot of professors that will walk into class and go, you know what, you're a geek. Let me channel your inner geekness. So it's like whenever I see a student that like is playing video games or something like that, I'm like, how about I teach you how to write so you never have to pay for a video game ever again? And they go, what? Like, and I'm like, yeah. How about that? How about like you review like perfect example. I just sent a review copy of the new Bard's Tale to one of my writers, and he was like, "Bro, I love this series. Like, I grew up on it." I'm like, "Yeah, and now you didn't pay for it, so now you can review it like a real critic." He's like, "Yeah, whoa, wow, man." I'm like, and I'm I'm one of these people where it's like I've lived like a really fun, cool life. I've busted my ass, but it's like I look around and I see people that like want to do it, and I'm not one of those people that keeps the secrets guarded and stuff. I tell people like what they need to do in order to like do the things that they want. So Review Fix is kind of like that. Like we're like the Montreal Expos of journalism. Like I can't afford to keep people there for a long time and pay them, so it's like they write like anywhere from like 5 to 10 solid pieces, and then I say, now you've got enough articles under your belt, go somewhere else, like go someplace and get paid, start your dream. So some people collect baseball cards, some people like fix cars. I have a website, so I come home every day and I mess around with my website.
No, I love it. What my question is like, why didn't I go to the college you teach at? I went to University of Kentucky, which was great. I loved University of Kentucky, but that sounds like, so like it sounds like you are just motivating your students and also just giving them a head start, which I love that. Like teachers that actually invest in their students.
It's crazy because like the college that I teach at, I have my associate's degree from, and I remember graduating from there, from Kingsborough Community College in Brooklyn, New York, and I remember like graduating and just walking out for the first time, and I was just like, I never want to come back here ever again. Like I'm done. I'm ready to move on to the next. And I love that. I love the college, but I was a dumb like 20-year-old kid, and I was just like, I'm ready to move on to the next thing. And then 2 weeks later, they called me and asked me if I wanted to be an English tutor. So while I went to my 4-year school, I would go to my 4-year school during the day, and then I would work there at night. And then when I got my bachelor's degree, then they asked me if I wanted to teach part-time, and then I was covering minor league hockey and minor league baseball at night and teaching there during the day. And then I just stayed there. I never left. So the place is basically like my Hogwarts. It's wild the way it all turned out.
That's amazing, dude. What it sounds like is like you love what you do, and people love what you do as well. So it makes like going to work even easier.
Yeah, I have a ton of fun at work. Like, there's like the usual like sheriff politics and stuff. Like I'm the baby. Like I'm 35 years old and I've worked there for 12 years, and I'm still the baby, and I'm probably gonna be the baby for like another five, anywhere from 5 to 10 years, because academia is older. Like people are older, so it's just something I have to deal with. But like spending time with my students and helping them accomplish their dreams, like I have students that have been published in the New York Daily News, the New York Post, iHeartRadio, Guitar World, like all sorts of cool places, and they're all like babies still. They're all in like their mid to late 20s. So I've gotten to see the fruits of my labor already. So going to work every day is a lot of fun.
Nice, nice. I love it. I love it.
So you talked about seeing kids come in playing video games and doing whatever, and you said you didn't like to keep secrets in getting into this industry. What are some of those secrets for those interested in games journalism or journalism in general?
So we'll start with journalism in general. So like I have a huge problem with dreamers. Dreamers suck. Dreamers say, I want to do this. I would love to do this. I would do anything to do this. But they don't do anything. A doer will say, you know what, I want to do this, so I'm gonna start a site. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna start a site. Or, you know what, I'm gonna message the guy that does no clip on YouTube and say like, oh, how did you get involved in this? And blah, 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 blah. So when I see somebody that has talent, I reach out to them. When I see a dreamer, I just let them dream. But when somebody has the initiative and they start to do something on their own, then I reach out to them and I help them. So like first things first, if you want to be a writer, you've got to write every day. It's like if you want to be in great shape and you want to have a six pack, what do you have to do? You have to go to the gym. And you have to go to the gym, pretty much every day. So if you want to be a writer, you don't go to Starbucks and like open up your your MacBook and have everyone look at you and like, oh, I wonder what he's doing, blah, 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 blah. Like I write on the bus, the train, the toilet, like every single place that I can write. And I write every single day, and I bicker with my wife sometimes about it. Like she's like, just close the computer. I'm like, I'm almost done. I'm almost done. And she's like, all right, okay, just finish. Let's. So it's like you've got to do it every single day. And then another thing, like to get into games journalism, you've got to reach out to developers and publishers and press agents. So it's like I remember when I was working on my associate's degree, I was editor-in-chief of my college newspaper, and we were reviewing games, but we were paying for them. It's like Madden. I'm dating myself here. Like Madden 05, comes out, and I'm like, wouldn't it be awesome if like we got Madden 05 like for free?
Oh yeah, that's always the best.
Yeah, like why the fuck should we have to pay for this if we're gonna review it? Like we're gonna give them attention, you know? So like I just started doing Google searches and finding press agents that like worked for EA and worked for Konami and worked for this place, and none of them answered me until one day somebody from Atlas answered me, and I got Persona 3 and I got Steambot Chronicles, and I established a relationship with Atlas 13 years ago, and I still talk to them to this day. And now Atlas and Sega are super close. So like when the new Yakuza comes out, yesterday I got Lightning Force and Sonic the Hedgehog for the Switch to review. So it's like those relationships that I started 13 years ago, I still have. So it's like pitch publishers. Not all of them are going to get back to you at first, but if some come back to you, then what you should do is just review the games that like you're getting from publishers. And also too, it was so different when I first started doing this in 2004, 2005. The indie scene was not what it is now. There was a big movement in like flash gaming. Like the great indie developers of today were the guys making flash games back then, like the Matt Thorsons and the guys doing Super Meat Boy and things like that. But now you can make a game in your house by yourself, and 6 months, 8 months, a year later, it could be on the Switch, it could be on the PS4. So it's a lot easier now. Where like, I'll give you guys an example. Have you guys played Video Kid on the Switch yet?
I have not, but I've watched gameplay of it.
It's freaking awesome. It's nuts. It's like Paperboy meets Back to the Future, like on steroids. It's like a pop culture like palooza, And I played it, and I loved it. And I was like, you know what? Like, I want to interview this guy for my book. I did some Google searching. I found him on Instagram. I messaged him. A week later, he answers me. Now he's in my book. It doesn't get much easier than that. But the thing is, it's like I've been doing this for a long time, so like my pitch is good. And that's the thing. You've got to know how to pitch these people. It's like, think of it like approaching a woman. Like if you walk over to some woman and she's hot, you're like, hi, sweetie. Your eyes caught the light and they shined, and the girl's gonna go, what?
Yeah, and she's out the door.
She's out the door, and if you walk over and you're like, yo, what's up, baby? Oh, she's gonna go, nope. And so you've got to find that sweet spot. So then when you start sending pitches to people and they start getting accepted, then you're like, this is the vernacular that I have to use. And then all of a sudden you start getting games for free. And this is the thing too. When you first start out as a journalist, you're kind of like this hungry lion in the jungle. No one is going to help you. Like you have to send pitches out to people. You have to do all of this stuff by yourself. And then after a while, the longer you do it, all of a sudden they're emailing you saying, oh, do you want to review our game? Or it happens to me all the time. It happened to me like 4 or 5 times this week, where like developers will email me and go, "Oh, here's a code for my new game. Play it and let me know what you think." And I'm like, man, 12, 13 years ago, this was so hard. I would have to beg for games. And now I get more games, and I get more CDs, and I get more comic books than I could have ever wanted. So it's like, people are going to tell you every day that you can't do this, you're not good enough, this, that, the other thing, and you just keep at it and keep at it. Because all you need is a couple of good articles under your belt where people say, you know what, this person, they know what they're doing. And then you throw that in your pitch. So it's like a couple of big interviews that I've done. Whenever I pitch somebody, I tell them, oh yeah, I interviewed this person, I interviewed that person. So then in the pitch they go, oh, well, if they interviewed this person, then they got to be good. Not necessarily true. In my case, it is, but not, you know what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
So and then the longer you do it, you will have interviewed like different actors, different musicians. So like if you want to interview a musician, then you've got like 5 or 6 big names that you've interviewed. So when you send that pitch out, you mention all the musicians that you've interviewed. When you do actors, you do the same exact thing. When you do video game developers, you do the same exact thing, and you build your credibility over and over. Most important thing you could ever have as a journalist is your credibility. Once you get caught lying or stretching or writing, BS, you're done. So it's like I tell my students all the time, you're not going to be a millionaire doing this, but you'll have the coolest stories at the end of the day. You'll get to speak to people and hear stories that you never, ever expected before. It's like last night, I put my daughter to bed, and it was like 9 o'clock at night. My wife was out working, and I had the house to myself, and I had a 2-hour call with the producer of NFL Blitz 2002, and he was also the producer on Maximum Carnage for Super Nintendo. It's like one of my favorite games of all time. And I just got to pick his brain, and he was telling me stories of how some of the greatest games Acclaim ever made that sold like millions of copies were designed in a basement in Oyster Bay, Long Island. and you're like, what? And he's just telling me these stories, and he's worked at Konami, at Mindscape, at Midway, and he's just telling me all these stories of what it's like to work with legends. And this guy's a legend too, and he doesn't even see himself that way. But it's just like, as a journalist, these people just open up to you and they give you the opportunity to tell their story. It's a huge responsibility, but it's like, if it's something that you want to do, you just have to do it. You can't say that you want to do it, and you can't think about wanting to do it. You just have to jump in and do it every day.
So like what I'm hearing, like, so if you're out here in our audience, what you got to do is like Patrick said, you got to do it, but also you got to be able to have a pitch for it. I mean, like, it's got to be a great pitch, not too much selling yourself, not too much like holding back. You gotta be able to put yourself on the middle line and say, hey, I'm decent. You should let me do this. And
You got to let them know like why you want to interview them, like what's your angle, So it's like perfect example. If you guys watch wrestling, I've pitched Jake the Snake Roberts before, and he's like, listen, I've read your stuff before, it's good, this and that, but I feel like the interview that we're going to do is going to be similar to interviews that I've done before. Like, we're not going to talk about anything new, and I don't really have anything new to talk about right now. So when I get something to talk about, or if you have a different idea for me, then get in contact with me. That's good, because some people just want to do the same interview over and over again, and that's why they don't get new followers on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook and stuff. You've got to like find a way to like keep it fresh. Even like for me, like, I mean, this is the 3rd podcast I've done in the last 6 days, and I am promoting this book and these games like crazy. And I'll tell you this right now, through like the first like 15 minutes or so, this is different from every other one that I've done so far.
well, that's good. We'd like to be different.
Yes, that's good. But the thing is though too, like, I try my hardest as well to make it different, and I try and match tone. Like, I'm looking at you guys right now, and you guys are smiling, and you're chilling out and stuff. So I try and match tone. I've done interviews with people where they were like super serious. So I had to. I was like, you know what, fuck it. All right, I'll be super serious. So it's rough every day as a journalist. You have to find a way to like do something productive, do something different. It's like I have a whole, like, on my desktop on my MacBook, I have a to-do list, and if it don't get done by the end of the day, I don't go to sleep. When it gets done, then I go to sleep. You're going to go to bed tired every single day. You're going to wake up tired and cranky and bitchy and moany. But all of a sudden, after you start doing it for a couple of months, a couple of years, then you're like, wow, I've done all of this stuff. And it starts to become super rewarding. So you can't give up after like one bad week or one bad day. And there are going to be times when people drive you crazy, but you got to just keep at it.
Oh yeah, and like, here's the thing, you always talk, you've been saying like, your day is never the same. Well, like, your job is never the same, because you do journalism, you do voice acting, you're an author, like, so like, how do you transition from journalism mode to voice acting mode to like book mode?
So Stone Cold Steve Austin once said that true success is you being you with the volume turned way up. So there's really like not that much of a difference between Pat the professor, Pat the teacher, same thing, Pat the voice actor and stuff. It's like I'm pretty much the same guy. It's just like when I teach, I expect like to be respected a little bit, like they're my students and I treat them well, but at the same time, like they can't be like, "Oh, what's up, bro?" Like when they walk into class. No, like I'm gonna open the door for you and try and like get you into a world. Like you've got to listen to me. It's like kind of like a Jedi Padawan relationship, you know? Like that's what I want. And then journalism, I mean, like I feel comfortable walking into like pretty much any newsroom. Like I mean, my first day at NBC by myself, Whitney Houston died, you
Wow.
know, and I rocked it that day. Like I covered SNL for 3 seasons. I covered 3 Super Bowls. I covered 2 Olympics. I had a fantasy football column, so it's like I feel comfortable like in pretty much like any newsroom. Like if tomorrow, if CBS called me and they're like, "Can you come in?" I'd be like, "Absolutely." Just tell me like what it is that you need me to do. So like journalism, I'm a little bit more like cocky about it because I'm comfortable. That's like my real like home. Um, the voice actor stuff, I am like I'm the Padawan. When these developers say to me like this is what we want, yes sir. When do you want it by? Oh, like next week, and I give it to them the same day. You know, so it's a some people don't understand that like when you're in a different like career or a different field, you've got to behave a little bit differently. I'm still the same person. I still act the same way, but like with the voice acting, I try and produce high quality work as quickly as possible. Story editing the same way. So like if they send me like, 10 pages of dialogue when I'm on my lunch break, that's what I'm doing. I'm going through it because I feel like I'll get more opportunities if they see that I'm hustling. Uh so and even as a journalist, like being cocky and stuff, I still work quickly and I work fast and I'm accurate. So the key is like not to be different, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
To be you and just to bust your ass because that's the thing. If people are not going to like you if you're successful, it's just a part of life. And the thing is, you've got to just your haters got to go. You know what? Yeah, I really don't like that son of a bitch, but he works really hard. So that's kind of like where you got to put yourself in everything that you do.
Yeah, and let's kind of you mentioned story writing and voice acting. So
Hmm.
let's go into those games. Like we talked about the games you review. Let's talk about those games that you're actually in and you take part of. Like
Yeah.
what like I guess give us like the names of the different games because you're voice acting in like 3, right? And then you story write also for those 3 or just for 2 or
So right now, um, there's some other stuff going on that I can't talk about. So like I can only confirm like 4 games right now. Um, so I am the main character in the Padre, and I'm also the story editor on that game. So that game it's about a Catholic priest that gets stuck in a haunted mansion. So it's kind of like Alone in the Dark meets like Maniac Mansion. It's a lot of fun. Um, it started out as a old school point and click game, um, but now it has controller function as well. So if you want to play it with an Xbox 360 controller on Steam, you can. If you want to play it the way that like I particularly enjoy it the most as a point and click, you can do that too. Kind of has like the combat system of like Diablo, where you click on the enemy to hit them and stuff. It's really intuitive. So that's the first game that I ever got involved in, and I'll tell you guys a story of it like after I list the rest of the game. So there's that. Then there's Treason in Space, which I'm writing the story for, and I'm like the sidekick in the game. I'm basically like if Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory was a robot, that would be my character in the game. He's just like this wise ass robot that uses big words. It's completely different from the Padre. Um, the third game is Relentless Rex, where I play the main character. It's a runner, so it's like Bit Trip Runner, but you're this little dinosaur running away from this big dinosaur, like a T Rex, and I'm the T Rex in the game. So like you're running away from me. Um, then there's the Caillou Offensive, which is basically like Rampage, um, with like a top-down view. So it's kind of like it looks a lot like the original Grand Theft Auto. It's just you're just destroying cities with these like massive monsters. And I'm a story editor on that game, and I'm also the narrator. So like when you lose, it's like loser, lose, or if you win, it's like winner, win. So, and then we're planning on some trailers and stuff for that game. So I'm going to be doing some of the voiceovers for the trailer. So those are the 4 games that I can announce. There's a lot of other fun stuff that like when I can announce it, you guys will be the first people that I tell. But The way it all started out was I finished The Minds Behind the Games, my book, and I'm just kind of like, all right, what's next? And I'm always on Twitter looking for indie games to like indie developers to interview for my site. Because that's the thing too. When you run a site, it's like every day you need content. So it sucks. It's like if you do like let's just say
Oh, we
like
might
like that,
we that you skipped out for a second. Can you back up a little bit?
yeah. Like let's just say like today you guys get an interview with Robert De Niro. You know, people will be like, "Oh my God, they got an interview with Robert De Niro," blah 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 blah, and you'll get millions of page views like today. Tomorrow you got to do it all over again, so it's like every day I'm on Twitter looking for like indie musicians, indie comic book writers, indie video game developers and stuff, and I came across this game called the Padre, and it looked like Minecraft, like those voxel type graphics, but the lighting was super solid, and it looked like the lighting was like Castlevania. So this priest is walking down like this strip of like a forest, and then this tree just like comes alive and like slaps him across the screen, and I was like, that's really freaking cool. So I reached out to the developers and I'm like, let me interview you. So I interview them, and it goes well, and it got good traffic on the site. So then they message me and they're like, do you want to play like the beta? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I start playing the beta, and I realized quickly that English wasn't their first language. So they're from Hungary. It read like the story is awesome. It read well, but I'm like, this could be tweaked. Like this could be tightened a bit. So I'm an English and journalism professor. So I was like, you know what, like I'm gonna tell them that like I want to edit the dialogue and the story in this game. So we talked and we came up with a price and everything, and holy crap. Now I'm a story editor on a video game. Now I have a paid gig with a video game company. So now, like every couple of days, they're sending me new dialogue and stuff like that, and I'm editing it and giving them suggestions for dialogue and stuff. And it was so much fun. And we did this for like 2 months, and then we're getting ready to go to Kickstarter, and then the voice actor leaves, and they're like, "We need a voice actor," and I'm like, "Yeah, I could do it." And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I could do it." So the guy that was the main character, he had this very radio friendly like Russell Brand English accent, like, oh, I'm like bloody Russell Brand, I'm like wacky English man. Oh my God, and I'm like, this game is scary. Like this guy's voice doesn't fit, you know. So I've always done voices, joking around. Like I was the guy that would make prank phone calls and stuff like that, and I love to like make fun of people and like use voices and stuff like that. So one voice that I've always been very comfortable doing is that Don LaFontaine, like epic movie trailer, like in a world, one man, one tortilla. Danny DeVito is the tortilla,
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I can't do that voice for this game. I'm like, because I need that English, like little twang in there. So I love Jeremy Irons, the actor. So I'm like, what if I try and like combine Jeremy Irons with that voice? And that's when I came across the Padre. I am Alexander, the Padre. I'm walking through a dark mansion, killing zombies and hunting them and finding out the mystery of this mansion that I'm stuck in. And I sent it to them, and they were like, yeah, this works. This is great. So I'm like, holy shit. Like I wow, so they're like, can you record all of the lines for the game? And I'm like, yeah. So I went in my man cave, and I busted out my Zoom recorder that I use for my interviews and stuff, and I recorded all the lines, and within like 45 minutes they send me a new build of the game, and my voice is in it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I'm like, holy crap. Oh my God, this is crazy. So after that, I basically said to myself, I didn't want to be a one-hit wonder. I didn't want to be known as like the Padre, like just the Padre. And I want to just say there's a lot going on with the Padre right now. It's on Steam. It's available on Steam right now. After the podcast is over, I'll hook you guys up. I have 2 codes left, so I'll give you guys 2 codes for it on Steam. It's almost finished on Steam. There's a lot of other things like that I can talk to you guys later about, like off the record and stuff like that. But I'm super proud of this game. It's a lot of fun. A lot of the dialogue and the silly, stupid stuff in there, like I wrote. So Ben Zalhali, the creator of the game, like the story and stuff. He's just like this super cool guy. He's like the Hungarian brother that I never knew I wanted, but now I love. He's just like an awesome guy, and he's super smart, super talented. So being able to like work alongside him for the past 9 months has been great. So this game is almost finished. So now I'm promoting my book, and I'm promoting the Padre. So the thing is, it's like I've kind of, in a weird way, become like the unofficial like mascot of the Padre, because like I'm comfortable speaking English and stuff like that, and America is a big market for the game. So whenever I do a podcast where I'm talking about my book, I always talk about the game too. So I was on a podcast called Just a Few More Minutes, and I was discussing the book. And one of the hosts on Just a Few More Minutes, his name is Pete Paquette. And he is an animator that you'll know from movies like Rio, Ice Age.
Oh wow! Yeah.
He's also an animator in games like Gladius, BioShock Infinite, Madden 18, Overwatch. Like, this guy's awesome. So the way Pete and I met, the way I got on Pete's podcast is I got a Facebook message from him, and it's like, "Are you Patrick Hickey, like the author of the Minds Behind the Games?" And as soon as I saw Pete Paquette, I knew who it was, because I'm that geek. I'm the guy that reads the back of instruction manuals and stuff like that. So I'm like, "Are you Pete Paquette that like did Gladius and BioShock?" And he's like, "How do you know who I am?" And I'm like, "How do you know who I am?" And then that was like the beginning of like another bromance. So I did the podcast, and there's a couple of other amazing guys on that podcast too. Jeff Gabor, who's like animation royalty. He's done like Peanuts and like Ferdinand, and like he's amazing. So at the end of the podcast, Pete Paquette goes to me. He's like, "If you ever want to get like more involved in video games, like just let me know." So I go, "I want to get more involved in video games."
Yeah.
So he's like, "Oh, well," he's like, "we'll talk soon." So I remember getting off the podcast, and I'm like, this could be awesome. But then this is the thing too. I've met so many people over the past like 12, 13 years where it's like, "We'll talk soon." Sometimes it's a nice way of saying, "Yeah, we'll never talk again."
Yeah.
And I didn't think that was the case with Pete, because Pete is like super straight ahead, and like he's not a bullshitter at all. He's like one of the most honest, upfront people I've ever met. So then a couple of weeks later, he messages me on Facebook, and he's like, "You ready to talk?" And I'm like, I couldn't believe that. Like, so we do a conference call between him and his brother Jeffrey, who's an amazingly talented video game engineer. Like, he's super talented. He did this zombie game for the the Microsoft like Oculus thing.
Oh wow! Yeah.
And he's super talented. So they outline this story that they have in their head, and it's basically like a space corridor first person shooter that kind of combines like all of the best things about like the Alien first person shooter. You guys ever played it before, like in the arcade?
Yeah.
It's like super frenetic jump scares. It's like the enemies never stop coming. So it's like that, Contra, and then like 70s like sci-fi Battlestar Galactica and stuff. So they throw this whole idea at me, and they're like, "So this is the idea. This is the game that like we want to make, and we want you to like populate this world with like people, backstory, lore. You can create characters. Like we just gave you like a simple premise, and we want you to like build it, like build the story." And I'm just like, "Oh my God, like this is amazing." So now like that game's in development right now. So that's so then that was the second game. So then what happened was I'm on Twitter, and I see this game called Relentless Rex, and it looks so freaking pretty. Like I'm a sucker for like Ubisoft games. Not in the fact that they're fun to play, because I mean some of them aren't, but like Assassin's Creed is super pretty. Rayman is super pretty, and this game reminded me a lot of like how I felt the first time, like a 12-year-old kid playing Rayman for the first time. So I reached out to my buddy Jim Kesselring, who's a former developer on the EverQuest series, and he runs an awesome site called RazorsIndies.com, and he does a lot of the same things that I do, like promoting the indie game scene. And he was like promoting this game, so I'm like, dude, you got to get me in touch with this developer. And he's like, why? And I'm like, I need to be the voice of that dinosaur. And he's like, okay. So then I started following the guy, and his name's Kevin Wins. I started following him on Instagram and Twitter and stuff, and he was posting video and like pictures of like who he wanted to voice Rex. And it was like Kevin Michael Richardson and Tony Todd and all these amazing voice actors. And I'm like, oh, these guys would be so smart if they took this up, because this game is so pretty. Like, no one would expect these guys to work on this game, but it would be like great for them because this game is so good. But like, what are the chances of getting a guy like that? So I busted Kevin Wins' balls for like 3 weeks. And I was just like, hey, Kevin, how's it going, man? What's going on? How you doing? Like, just like every day, just making conversation with them, and to the point where he knew like what I wanted. And he was just like, you know what? He's like, I'm going to feel bad if I don't like what you do. And I'm like, don't worry. Don't worry if you don't like it. Because at this point, no one had told me no. Everyone that I auditioned for, the first 2 people that I auditioned for, they loved what I did. So it's like I wanted to be told no, like, you're not good enough, because that would just piss me off and make me work even harder, So he gave me a script, and basically what happened was he wanted Kevin Michael Richardson, and I love Kevin Michael Richardson. Like, if you guys know who he is, he's like Principal Lewis on American Dad.
Yeah.
He's done Shredder on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. Super, super talented voice actor. So I said to myself, what if I combined Kevin Michael Richardson's like Shredder with like Arnold Schwarzenegger? What if I gave like Shredder like an Austrian accent, So I just started screwing around with my voice.
And then I came up with this: I am Relentless Rex, and I am over here, and I'm going to eat you and bite you. Yeah.
And
That's amazing.
I sent it to him, and he was like, I like this. This is growing on me. So like I did the trailer for his Kickstarter, and his Kickstarter was approved, which is important, because it's like if you narrate the trailer for a Kickstarter and it doesn't get approved, then it says something about like So it got approved, and then like Kevin is like, I already told you, he's an amazing artist, but like he's so goddamn smart. Like he goes to me like, all right, so I got us a podcast with these guys, and I'm like, okay, and he's like, you're gonna be Rex the entire time, and I'm like, what? I'm like, yeah, but I'm saying to myself, I'm like, I'm fucking Patrick Hickey Jr., baby. Like, I'm the author of the minds behind the games. I'm this, I'm that. He goes, no. He goes, you're gonna be Rex the entire time, and I'm like, okay. And he goes, I want you to have fun. He goes, I want you to be Rex, and I want you to literally like be Rex, So we've done a couple of podcasts where like I'm just Rex the entire time, and oh my god, it's like I'm talking about like eating people, and like, because I'm a T-Rex, so it's like I do that, and oh my god, we have so much fun. Like, that idea to like market the game like that is so funny, because it's like I've been on podcasts and I wouldn't even introduce myself. These people wouldn't even know who I was. Like, sometimes they thought it was Kevin doing 2 voices. So then one of the podcasts, I reached out to them and I was like, guys, I was on your podcast like 2 weeks ago. I would love to be on it again. And they're like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm Rex. And they're like, get out of here. And then I give them like my bio, and they're like, holy shit, you're an author too? I'm like, yeah, let's just talk about the book though this time. So working with Kevin has been super fun. I cannot wait to like, because like I said, the Kickstarter just got approved. So like he's building levels and things like that. So I can't wait to get more involved. And then, like, the guys with the Caillou Offensive, if I did nothing in video games, like, in terms of, like, voice acting, I would love to just be a narrator. Because growing up, Tim Kitzrow was, like, a super, super important person to me. So if you guys don't know who Tim Kitzrow is, he's the guy that goes, boom, shakalaka, he's on fire, like, and I've had the opportunity to to speak with Tim before and interview him, and he's just like this amazing guy with this. I mean, if you guys have played NBA Jam and NFL Blitz and MLB Slugfest and now the new Mutant Football League, like he is super talented. So the Caillou Offensive, like I basically do the narration, not in that voice, but I do narration in the game, and I'm gonna do some of the trailers and stuff. And those guys, I just saw a game that was super retro, that looked super fun to play, and they were fans of my work. So it was just like it was a match made in heaven. So they are awesome on Twitter. They are super supportive. Like I could take like a dump and take a picture of it and put it on Twitter, and they would retweet it and say like this is the best dump in the world. Like they are so supportive and awesome. So over the past like since April of this year, like I've gotten in really like 4 games, and I have my book out. I have a sequel in the works already. So it's like it's been whirlwind, and it because this is the thing. The way this all happened was I'm 33. I was 33 years old at the time. I'm a full-time college professor. I have a great job with great benefits. I only work 4 days a week, and I had a wife that was 5 months pregnant. And I said to myself, like, this is the time that I have to start doing the things that I always wanted to do, because when my daughter gets older, I'm not going to be able to do them. And at the same time, too, whenever you get too comfortable in a position, it's time to like spice things up. You know, like nobody wants to eat white rice the rest of their life. Like you got to throw some adobo and sazon in there. You know, so writing a book was something that I always wanted to do. Voice acting was something that I always wanted to do. So I just jumped into it full bore, and it started happening. So
That's amazing. And like we've kind of like toured your life. So like these guys, like our audience has your credentials, and like I assume that this like still like pours into your book too. So let's talk about that book. The book that we've been hearing about it. It's The Minds Behind the Games. What spurred this idea, Patrick?
so like I said, 33, wife is pregnant, and this is the thing, man. Like my wife would have went to work the day that she gave birth. Like you think Mick Foley is tough? Like my wife is like the toughest person that I know. I remember she woke up that morning, and I was on break from like winter recess and stuff. So like, you know, I would help her like get, you know, ready in the morning, and you know, send her off to work and stuff. And she was in the bathroom, and it's like her water started to break, and she's like, "Oh, I think I'm okay." And I'm like, "No, I think we need to like go to the doctor. You know, I think like this is happening, you know." So but like the pregnancy like was rough on her. Like, you know, she would come home from work and she would be tired, so she would go to sleep earlier and stuff. So I had a lot of time to do things. And I remember telling my boss at work, like I wanted to create a multimedia journalism course. And they're like, "Nah, you know, that's not in the cards." Like, and I'm like, "Okay. So I'm just supposed to like kind of teach and go home." Like, yeah, I run my site and I write and stuff, but I still had a ton of time. So I'm like, I really wanted to create that course. And he was like, "Yeah, no, it's not going to happen." So I'm like, "You know what? I'm going to write a book." And he goes, "Yeah, yeah, go write a book." So I remember talking to my wife about it. My wife's like, "Okay, you're not going to talk to me about writing a book. You're going to write a book, or you're not going to talk about it." I'm like, she's got the right idea. She's smart, you know? So I'm sitting in my man cave, and I'm kind of like, what am I going to write a book about? And I'm just surrounded by games. I've got like over 2,500 video games across like 36 consoles.
Wow.
Super geek. I don't even know how I'm married. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do an interview anthology. Like I'm gonna do a video game book that is like chapter based. Each chapter is focused on a specific game, and I'm gonna find the developers, and I'm gonna have them tell me their story. So I would say a couple of weeks before I came up with this idea, I had just finished reviewing Brett Weiss's top 100 video games, 1977 to 1987. It's an awesome book. It's like part reference book, part history book. He's been a journalist for over 25 years. It's an awesome book. It's been in every room in my house. Like I've been in the bathroom with that book. Like that's how good it is. And I've had like when I got the book to review, I probably had like 50 games in the book, and I went out and like bought more of the games because like his description of the games was so good that it made me want to buy them. So I didn't want to rip off Brett's style. So I'm like, I'm not going to write a reference book, and I'm not going to write like a history book. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find all of these developers, and I'm going to start interviewing them. So I'm like, now I have to get games. What games am I going to pick? Oh my God. So I just start looking around my man cave and I start taking games off the shelf. And I took off King's Bounty on the Sega Genesis because like I played King's Bounty in like 1992 and I loved it. And I remember playing a game called Pokemon in 1996 and I was like, this is King's Bounty with like animals. This is the same thing, you know? King's Bounty, Mutant League Football, E.T. on the Atari 2600. Trying to think of what else. Boy and His Blob on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Toe Jam and Earl on the Sega Genesis. And what was he? And Bart versus Space Mutants on the Nintendo. So I find all the developers online. I go to like Moby Games, LinkedIn, Facebook, all these websites and stuff like that. And I write my pitches. Like I told you guys, you got to know how to write a pitch. So I send out the 6 pitches to these 6 developers, and I'm like, if I get answers back from half of them, that might be enough to like start the book. So within like 2 weeks, all 6 got back to me.
Wow.
So now like I started sending pitches out around like Halloween, and then like by like, you know, November like 5th or 6th, all of them like got back to me. So now by Thanksgiving, I had interviewed all of them. And I had written about like 4 out of the 6 chapters. So like I was working my ass off. So now it's like the day after Thanksgiving. And what are you doing like that whole weekend? You're eating and sleeping, you know? So my wife was napping on the couch next to me. And I had my computer on my lap. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I think it's time for me to start pitching publishers. So I pitched a bunch of publishers. And then 3 days later, McFarlane got back to me. And they were like, yeah, we want you to do this. So my original goal was to get like 15 games, lots of pictures, like a coffee table book, but like with interviews in it, you know?
Something with depth.
Yeah, something with depth, but not too much depth because I wanted it to be like fun, you know, and airy. And they were like, Pat, that sounds like a great idea, but like we want this book to be at least 75,000 words. So I'm like, okay. So they're like, if all of the chapters are the same length that the ones that you sent us so far are, you're going to need like 25 games, not 15 or 20. You're going to need like 25 games. So I'm like, oh, crap. Because I just gave myself so much more work. But then by the end of it, I had 36 games. So the book is over 100,000 words. And McFarlane forced me to make this so much more than a cute coffee table book. Like this is so much more than that now. This is like a legit book, like 250 pages of like interviews, like in-depth interviews that aren't on Wikipedia, that, you know, aren't on YouTube, where these developers, like we're talking like NBA Jam, Deus Ex, Wasteland, like Maniac Mansion, like important games in video game history, where these developers tell their story, and they tell their story in more depth than they ever have before. And you find out things about these games that you never knew. Spider-Man 2 on the PS2, one of the most important, you know, comic book based games of all time. NHL PA 93 and NHL 94, they're like the 2 most important hockey games of all time. And these developers opened up to me and told me their stories. So it went from being a cute coffee table book to like something much more substantial. And then like the icing on the cake was the book that like really inspired me, Brett Weiss. I pitched him and I was like, bro, I need you to write the foreword for me. And he was like, okay. And that was like the icing on the cake. And I've had the luxury of like meeting Brett. Like this past summer he came to New York and I gave him like a tour of New York City. We walked over like the Brooklyn Bridge together. I took him to like my favorite retro video game store, and we just chilled out for like an entire day. He got some like Manhattan pizza, you know, and it like came full circle from me being a critic and a journalist to being like a legit author, and then being supported by like the very guy that like inspired me to do it, you know? So that's kind of like the story of the book and how it came to be.
Like that's first off, that's just a crazy of how it came together so well. Like it's like almost like it's meant to be.
Yeah. And the thing is too, like, sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good. Go
like,
for it. Yeah.
As all of this stuff is going on, it's like Night Trap gets remastered. Wonder Boy and Monster World gets remastered. Like all of these games, like NBA Jam, like somebody decides to write a book just about NBA Jam, and like all of these things, like the Nintendo Classic gets announced. So it's like all of these, like all of a sudden, like retro is cool again, and like my book is like a celebration of like all of these great games in video game history. So it's like the temperature was just so right, and all of the chips fell like you're right. That's just the way it felt, like that, like all of a sudden this is like supposed to be.
Man, that's amazing. So like, I know there was like 30. You said 36 games, 38 games.
36 games.
36 games. That's a lot of like games just to learn and interview about. But like, were there some you were like kind of nervous for, or some that you were super excited for, or just anything like that like kind of stuck out to you?
Oh yeah, well see that's the thing too, and it's like I'm not saying it to be like too cocky, but it's like there's not like one throwaway chapter in the entire book. Like every game in there, like down the chapter list, I could give you like one reason why it belongs in the book. So it's like some of the games influenced like games that we play now. Some games like should have been well known, but they weren't. Some games were never released in the United States. Like so, it's like I'll give you an example. You guys ever play Pro Wrestling X before? Do you know the story behind Pro Wrestling X?
I have not played it.
Okay.
Yeah, me neither.
So this game started out on a dare. So the developer had never worked in the video game industry before, and he was a big fan of the Nintendo 64 wrestling games, like No Mercy, WWF WrestleMania 2000. Those were like the best wrestling games of all time. So when WrestleMania X8 came out on the GameCube, he went like in all these forums and just like shit talked. He was just like, this game sucks, blah, 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 blah. And then somebody was like, bro, why don't you make your own game? So 12 years later and over $250,000 of his own money, and he's still developing his wrestling game. So it's stuff like that that's in the game. Like this guy in the book, this guy just tells the story of how he went from a guy that played video games to now being the only independent video game publisher that only publishes wrestling games. So there's another game called The Fireman that never came out in the United States, but it's a super awesome game, and it's made by Human Entertainment, so they're the same guys that did like Fire Pro Wrestling and Clock Tower and stuff like that. And this is just an awesome game. It's loosely based on the movie Backdraft. So it's like it's an RPG where like fire is your enemy. So it's like you go into a building and it's on fire and you've got to put out the fire, and like the dialogue is awesome. And it's just this game that it never came out in the United States. And the developer isn't even in video games anymore. Like he gives mountain tours in Canada. So it's like this guy, he made that game, and then he made this other game, Mizurna Falls, which is like one of the first ever like open games. Like it totally influenced Shenmue. Like there would not be a Shenmue without Mizurna Falls. Like the game had like you would play through the game, and it had its own currency, and it had like that active clock where like the environment changed based on the time and stuff like that. So this guy is a super influential game developer, and he's not even in the industry anymore. And that's the thing, like there's a huge problem with like recognition for video game developers. If I tell you guys who played Captain America in the last Avengers movie, you'll know right away.
Yeah.
If I say who sings Thriller,
Everybody knows
duh.
that. Michael Jackson.
Yeah. And if I say who created Grand Theft Auto, what do you say?
Well, I say Rockstar Games, but I don't know the actual guy.
Of course. Yeah, and that's the thing though too. You'll say who published it, but you won't even say the name of the company who developed it, because you probably don't know. And then you don't know the person whose idea it was to create this game, And that's a problem, because you guys spend more, and myself included, before I started writing the book, we spend more time playing video games than we do watching these movies and listening to this music. So how come we don't have this connection with these people that made this art? So I just went out, and it became like a life's mission to interview as many of these developers as possible and get them to talk about their influences and talk about like what made them decide to create these games.
Man, you just hit a point like I would have never thought of. Like I spend more time like playing any video game than I have. Besides Cool Hand Luke, I've watched that movie more than any other movie. But like, I play Fortnite all the time. That's the game I'm playing right now. That's playing on stream and stuff. Like, I couldn't tell you the guy who came up with the idea for like all the skins or anything like that. And I play that game probably over 40 hours a week.
Yeah,
and that's crazy.
It's like why? Why don't we? you know. And it's like when I announced like that I was writing a video game book, a lot of professors that I work with like, why are you writing a video game book? Like, oh my God, like it was childish, you know. And I tried to explain to them that like 60, 70 years ago, if I said that I was going to write a book on film, you would go, why? That's so stupid. Blah, 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 because film wasn't, you know, like in 1930 and 1940, it was this really cool thing, but it wasn't like now. If I said to you guys, oh, I'm writing a book on film, you'd be like, oh, okay, that's cool because film's respected. Video games are just starting to get to the point like they're the most important, most digested, most financially successful form of entertainment in the world, but they don't get the respect that they deserve. So I'm hoping that like even if the book doesn't do what it's supposed to do now, 30, 40 years from now, when sadly some of these developers start to pass away, people will be like, wow, like the stories behind these games and these developers are important, and it becomes like a more than like a footnote in history. And so far, so good. I mean, the book's been out for about 5 months, and it's in 38 libraries across the world, including like UC Berkeley, the University of Michigan, Stanford. So it's doing pretty good so far. So all is good so far.
And you're exactly right. Like, video games don't have the respect in any like like genre of media right now except themselves. Like esports does not get respect it deserves for all these people that put in hard work, put in hours of training for a game.
Sure.
They don't, and then like also the media of people who write about video games, they don't get like recognized for the art that they're reviewing, like the actual good hard journalism they're doing to review a game and doing all the work for that. And then even the people developing the games are not being respected. And I think, that's a justice issue. That's a media justice issue. And that's like what this book kind of, brings out, like, hey, appreciate these people. Do it. Come on. It's like
Yeah,
a call to
absolutely.
action.
That's the hope. Like if one day somebody comes over to me and they're like, "Oh, I want to write a book, a video game book," and it's like because of you, like that would absolutely like make my day. And like the goal is that I want to do one of these books like every 2 or 3 years, to the point where like 10 years from now, I could say, you know what, I'm gonna take all the Genesis games from all of the books and put them together and do like a Genesis like omnibus, omnibus or whatever. And then I'll add in like I'll go and find like 5 or 10 new Sega games, like new games that I haven't done yet, and add that to the book. So it's like I want this to be a continuing, ongoing conversation. You know,
It's like an encyclopedia of like video games.
yeah. But the thing is too, it's like encyclopedias are boring to read. It's like everyone that's read it so far has told me that it's super easy to read, and that's the point. It's like I'm a college professor, I have a master's degree and stuff, but I'm writing this book just as much for you guys, the hardcore video game people, as I am for like 13 or 14-year-old kids that are like, oh yeah, ET sucks. And then I go, well, why? And they go, oh, because I read it on Wikipedia. Then I want to just like slap them in the face with the book, and then have them go to the chapter and be like, reading this chapter is going to take you like 10 to 15 minutes. Read it so you know like what really happened. So it's two things. People that play video games, they do like to read because you got to read when you play video games, but you don't want to read shit. It's like if you're playing an RPG and the dialogue is good, you'll read it. If it's not, what are you going to do?
You fast go through it fast.
Yeah, the cinematic, the intro to a game, if it's really good, you'll watch it. If there's dialogue in it, you'll watch it. But if it's bad, what do? You skip through it. So I've tried to write it in a way where like it's super accessible and it's fun, and sometimes it gets serious, but a lot of the time it's just real. It's like it's really cool, fun stories about these games that you don't know. So the goal of any good journalist is to entertain, inform, and educate. And I feel like that's what this book does.
Yeah, and I mean, you were talking about like kids that might say, that one of these games sucks, but you've never played it. You don't know, or not that but the child doesn't know.
Oh yeah,
they
yeah.
immediately judge it. Oh, the graphics suck. That makes the game suck. No, I like these games that you're doing. Like some of these have like amazing stories that none of the newer generation of kids are gonna go play because they're like, oh, the graphics suck. Well, no, those were great back in the day. You just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And like it could like I said again, it could be a call to action. Hey, kid, go play this game. Go talk to your dad about this game or something. Like I think what your book, it's not only just having a call to action to recognize video games is as the respect they deserve, it's also kind of bringing people together through like the generation gap too, because my dad played Atari, I played PS2, but there was a gap there. But like this book could be like, oh, well, your game was really good, son, because I read this book and I actually liked how it was. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know many good games on Atari, but like, Dad, that game was great too back in the day. I should go play it. Like, I think it's got a call to action, it's got purpose, it's got just bringing people together, which is amazing that one book can do so many things.
Thank you so much. It's like somebody bought the book off of me yesterday, and the first chapter is Mutant League Football, and after they read it, they're like, I've heard of the game before, but I never played it, and now I do. Now I want to play it, and I'm like, that's the point. That's the point. And it's like, as consumers of video games, the average video gamer will be like, is it good? Is the game good? Is it bad? And it's like, I don't say if a game is good or bad in the book. And there are some games that aren't that good, but I explain why they're not. It's like a game like Night Trap. It didn't get good reviews, but the reason why it didn't get good reviews is because it came out like 6 years late. It was originally designed for a Hasbro VHS-based system called the Nemo. So imagine that, like playing video games off a VHS tape.
Gosh, that does not sound fun.
Yes, but the thing is, in 1986, so this is the thing. You're familiar with Dragon's Lair, right?
Yes.
It's like you get to control a cartoon. It's super cool. It's super fun. It's super 80s, and the animation was beautiful. So it's like that game's a classic. So a couple of years after Dragon's Lair, Night Trap comes out, and now it's like you get to control a horror movie with like hot chicks and vampires and stuff like that. If this game would have came out when it was supposed to, it would have been just as cool as Dragon's Lair. But what happened was the Nemo couldn't get sold anywhere because Hasbro wanted way too much money for it, and Toys R Us and like all these other places are like, if you sell this system for like $100 cheaper, you'll make millions of dollars, and they didn't want to change the price point. So all the games released for it just never got released. The system died, was never formally released. And then when the Sega CD came out, the developers of these games saw another avenue to finally release these games. So now they're releasing games like Sewer Shark, Ground Zero Texas, Night Trap, because they made them and they invested a ton of money in them. So now they're releasing them, and people are looking at them like, oh, this sucks. So it's like, let me ask you guys a question. If Super Mario Brothers, the original Super Mario Brothers, comes out in 1991 instead of 1985, is it nearly as important in video game history?
No, it's still going to be great. Well, I don't know. I have nostalgia for that game. I can't answer that question because I didn't play it until college. I did not play that game till college, and it had so much nostalgia because I'd played other Super Mario games. That's a hard question for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends on if a game similar to it came before, because then I feel like somebody would have looked at it and be like, oh, this is just this game. And I feel like that happens a lot in movies, especially with 80s movies and stuff like that, like the action movie where you have one guy going and saving the world. Now you have all these things that everybody's just like, oh, it's so cliche, especially Terminator is one. Whenever new people or younger people watch Terminator for the first time, it's like, oh, it's, stupid. It's so cliche. It's like, yes, this movie is cliche because it made everything else copy it. It's like, I don't know. There's just that gap there. And I think Mario coming out 6 years later could have caused a similar gap.
Absolutely. It's like one of the best quotes that I got from a video game developer. He says that you remember a game because of the memories that it gives you, the time that you shared with somebody. Like the gameplay and the story and all of that is important, but it's like who you were at the moment that you experienced it. You connect with that the rest of your life. So one of the reasons why Super Mario Brothers in 1985 was so important is because of the millions of kids that were exposed to it in the 80s. 1991 might be a different story. You know, you connect with Super Mario Brothers so much because of the person you were when you first played it. It's like I remember the first time that I got into Final Fantasy VII and I saw Aeris die when Sephiroth comes and he shoves the sword through her back and stuff, and I was just like a 14-year-old kid, you know. And it's just like there's a part in that game like right before where you have to pick to go out on a date with either Aeris or Tifa, and I picked Aeris. So I'm like, yo, this is my homegirl. This is gonna be my bitch the rest of the game, you know. And then Sephiroth kills her. So it's like every time I see that, it's not necessarily that I'm seeing it. I am, but I'm also being reminded of like the vulnerable 14-year-old boy that was like just watched like almost like his polygonal crush get killed, you know. And that wasn't before then, that like wasn't possible in a video game. Like they didn't just go and kill like one of the main characters in a game like that midway through the game. So we connect with who we are and where we are, and also like as a society, like in the early 90s, like when Night Trap was like banned and all of these things, like the Democrats and like in Congress were just like totally trying to destroy the video game industry. It's one of the reasons why we have the ESRB now, and it's like Doom, Lethal Enforcers, Mortal Kombat, and Night Trap were like the four games that like Joseph Lieberman and all of the House and Senate Democrats were just like, we need to get rid of all of them. But like Doom is still around. Mortal Kombat is still around, kicking alive and kicking. Lethal Enforcers, million seller in the what's it called on the Super Nintendo, had a sequel, didn't do so well, but it was a cash cow in the arcade. But like Night Trap, for some reason, it just got the worst of the brunt, you know. It got the brunt of the beating. And like the guy who created it, who helped create it, he also programmed Missile Command on the Atari 2600. Like the guy is a freaking pro, you know. And his girlfriend left him because of Night Trap.
Oh wow. I would like.
And
I'm assuming this is all in the book too, right?
it's all in the book, you know. So it's like a lot of people don't know that,
I
you know.
don't. Yeah.
So that's why like you read, like you may go, oh, Night Trap sucked, I don't want to read that chapter, you know. Or oh, Pro Wrestling X has been on Steam for like 4 years, I don't want to read that chapter. And then you find out like the mind behind the game, you know, and it becomes something so different. I've done interviews with people where they were like, oh, I didn't even know that game existed, but now I love it, blah, blah, blah. And that's the thing. I want people to connect with the developers of games the same way that they connect to musicians. It's like this guy I used to hang out with, he was a good friend of mine. He loved Michael J. Fox. Like he just thought Michael J. Fox was like the best actor, and he was like an '80s kid. So Back to the Future, Doc Hollywood, Family Ties, and stuff. So like I would joke around and I'd make fun of Michael J. Fox, and he would take it personal. He'd be like, "You don't make fun of Michael J. Fox," blah blah blah. And like people will do that like for video games. Like they'll be like, if it's like my wife gets on me all the time. She'll be like, "Why do you play Pokemon? It's so stupid," you know. And I'll get on her, but then like I'll say like, "Oh, this developer, that developer," and she's like, "I don't care about the people. I'm talking about the game." I'm like, "No, because the people are just as important as the game." So it's like I'm trying every day to try and let people know that games aren't just like pumped out by, you know, faceless people. There's people that like have lives and love and care and all of these things and give up so much to make these games.
Yeah, people don't really realize how vulnerable these people are when they put out a product. And by I say product, I mean they put out their life. Like they put out what they've been working on forever, how long they have, and they're really just waiting for feedback because they want people to enjoy what they enjoy. And when people say, you know, a video game sucks, they don't understand the insult they're putting out there for the creator, or for the story writer, or for the dialogue writer. They need to be aware of that. I'm like, don't just say you don't like a game. At least try it and find something good in it, or give me a reason why. Don't say I don't like it because it's dumb.
And the thing is though too, it's like I've learned this from doing all of these interviews, that there's always like extenuating circumstances. There's always things that like you find out when you talk to these developers and you're like, really? And then they tell you and you go, wow. Wow. So like I'll give you guys an example. If you've played Spider-Man 2 on the PlayStation 2, One of the coolest parts of that game is that it's open world, so it's like Grand Theft Auto a bit. But the coolest part of that game is the web slinging mechanic, that like the webs have to like connect to like buildings. You can't
Yeah.
just like web sling through the sky, you know? Like the webs have to actually like touch something and connect. And that like web slinging system redefined like Spider-Man games. But this is the thing though, it was actually developed during the first Spider-Man the movie game, but they decided at the last minute not to put it into the game. And they used it just for Spider-Man 2. So I love Spider-Man the movie, the first one, but I always said to myself, it's so stupid. Like I'm in like the city and I'm web slinging through the city, but it's like I know my webs are like not going anywhere. Like it just the game would have been so much better if it had that web slinging mechanic. And the thought of like, wow, it actually existed before, and the original Spider-Man the movie game could have been just as good as the second, but they wanted to get it out as quickly as possible. Like that's just crazy to me, you know? And it's like every chapter in this book, you're gonna find out something about a game and go, that game could have been completely different. And it's like problems with the publisher, guy just sometimes it's like two guys working on a game and they don't have the time. Or like one of the biggest things, a lot of these games for the Sega and the Super Nintendo, they didn't have the memory to do it. So it's like Desert Strike. If you guys have ever played Desert Strike on the Sega Genesis, it's like a great series. Like they had Desert Strike, Jungle Strike, Urban Strike, Nuclear Strike. When I spoke to the developer Mike Posehn, he said on Desert Strike, the Genesis cart was full.
Oh
They
wow.
could not squeeze like another pixel of like another like bit of memory onto that cart. Like they did every single thing possible to get every single thing that they could on there. So
Well, and like,
it's pretty wild.
what's like to kind of put that in perspective? How many floppy disks was Doom on when it first came out for a computer? It
Well,
was.
see this. Go ahead.
Well, me and my friends were reminiscing on that because my buddy just got Doom for the Switch, and he was like, "I'm like, I cannot remember the number on that, but like it was a crap ton of floppy disk
Yeah.
for that game. Like you don't
Yep.
realize how big of a constraint memory was back when they're like back that in those days when like they were trying to make games.
It's like I'll give you another example. Because you mentioned Doom and Doom's in the book, but the cool thing about this version of Doom is I reached out to the developer of Doom on the Game Boy Advance. So it wasn't the original team for the original Doom. And the reason why is because if you play Doom on the Game Boy Advance, it's freaking awesome. And you're like it's not Doom is not supposed to work the way that it does on the Game Boy Advance. And I always wanted to find out why. And I spoke to the developer, and it ended up being a wild thing because it's like I haven't spoken to him since he gave me the answers. He was battling cancer, and I hope he's okay. And it was basically like 4 days before my manuscript was due, and I was still waiting on answers from him. And I said to him, I'm like, I have like 3,000 words left in this book, and if you want them, they're yours. I want people to be able to hear your story because it was just so wild. So what happened was, um, he got the contract to work on Doom for the Game Boy Advance, and him and his team developed Doom on the Game Boy Advance, and it was running at like 30 frames a second and stuff, and it was just like this super solid technical achievement. So now a couple of months left in the development cycle, and one of the creators, Carmichael of Doom, tells him, "How about this? I just found the Atari Jaguar ROM for Doom in my attic. What I want you to do is I want you to put that Atari Jaguar ROM on the Game Boy Advance. So like everything that you did, it looks good and it's cool and stuff, but no, I want you to try and squeeze this Atari Jaguar 64-bit ROM onto a Game Boy Advance cart." And they had like no time, and they still did it. And the thing is, the game runs freaking awesome, but this developer swears that his version of Doom is better.
Wow.
So now it comes out, and this version of Doom is awesome, but for some reason, ID Software and like the publisher, they don't promote it at all. Like they don't market it. It doesn't particularly sell that well. So then what happens is they don't get their contract extended for Doom 2. So now this dev team swears that like the team that took over and did Doom 2 stole their code.
Oh wow.
So again, that's a story that like people will play Doom on the Game Boy and be like, yo, this is like actually a pretty sweet ass version of Doom. Like this works. But then they don't know all that other stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Like, and it's almost like these are just like hidden nuggets of knowledge that nobody went out and found, but you went out and you dug them up and you found them, and like you're just like, hey, here's my nuggets of knowledge and all my nuggets of great stories and my nuggets of just awesome games that you might not have played.
But that's exactly what happened. And then like when after the book came out, I remember I did like a podcast and I'm like, guys, I have to announce something. I'm not special anymore. Like you guys know everything that I know because everything that I knew I put into this book. So I'm not special anymore. I've given you everything that I know. So the only way that I can continue to make myself special is to do another book. So
Which you're in the works of that right now, right?
I've got so the first book had 36 games and this one already has 38. And the confirmed titles already, I can tell you a couple like right off the top of my head. The original Madden football, like the original Madden football. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3.
Oh, that's such a good game. I love that game.
WCW NWO Revenge on the Nintendo 64.
Played that a whole lot.
Same here. I love that game. And Sanders Keel, the producer, is an amazing guy. I did a great interview with him. Maximum Carnage on the Super Nintendo. NFL Blitz 2002. Those are just a few like right off the top of my head. But also, if you're into indie games and you play the Switch, like I said, the Video Kid, West of Loathing, which is an amazing game. I'm trying to think. Let me just load up really quick the list of games that I have so far. Okay. So I've got a whole bunch of developers that are confirmed, but they haven't given me answers yet. But they've said yes, so there's no reason why they wouldn't be in the book. So, like X-Men Legends, Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, Pitfall, Strider, the original NBA Shootout, Parappa the Rappa, Die Hard Trilogy, the original Star Wars Battlefront,
Oh my gosh, yes.
Double Dragon, Revolution X. Let's see, Loaded, which was an awesome top-down shooter on the PS1. Super bloody, made my grandmother throw up when she watched me play it. So again, if you like indie games too, Songbringer, it's freaking awesome. Trying to think of what else. Oh yeah, the original Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, there it is.
So yeah, there's a Dungeons and Dragons Heroes, which was an awesome game that got canceled on the PlayStation 2, but was an Xbox exclusive. George Romero's wife, Brenda Romero, who's an amazing developer, she developed it. Family Guy on the PS2. Disney Infinity, Mutant League Hockey, and Raiders of the Lost Ark on the Atari 2600, which is probably like one of the most influential and best-selling movie-based games of that era. So, and the same developer as E.T. So yeah.
Well, it sounds like you already have an awesome lineup for this book as well.
I do, and I'm super happy with it. And I'm still trying to get like I want to have like at least 40 games. So right now I have 38. I want to try and get at least 40. If I can get like in between 42 and 45, then I think I'm going to stop. The difference between the first book and the second book is like the first book I was concentrating mainly on writing it. So the narrative and all of the story, like I'm super happy with. There were 75 pictures in the book, which is good, but I'm aiming for like at least 150 in the second book. So like every chapter in the first book had like two pictures, which is good. Considering each chapter is like 5 or 6 pages, but like this, I want to make it super visual. So, like I was talking to Mark Flitman yesterday, the producer for Maximum Carnage, and I was like, if you have any pictures that like you could send me, and he's like, oh, I have some promo stuff that like nobody else has seen. Those are the types of pictures I want to put in the book. So it's going to be a lot more visual, but I'm not going to change the writing style either. So each chapter will take you anywhere from like 8 to 10 minutes to read. It's perfect if you're like on the bus or train on your way to work and you want to just read something. or if like you're in the bathroom and you want to just read a couple of pages, or if you want to read a little bit before you go to bed. And the most important thing is like you don't have to read the book in order. Like you could look at the table of contents and go, oh, you know what? Like I want to read this chapter, and you could just go right to that, and you won't miss out on anything, and you won't feel gypped or anything like that. So it's supposed to be this fun book that you could kind of skim through if you want to, or this super serious book that you can go from chapter to chapter. So I'm trying to get at like that hardcore reader and then that casual reader both at the same time.
Well, and like you're covering all your bases: the hardcore reader, the casual reader, and then like the video game lover, the person that's wanting to find out more about video games. Like you're hitting it all, dude. Like that's,
Trying.
Yeah. And like where is the easiest place to find your book?
Okay, so I've been waiting for this question. I love this question. So it's available on Amazon. It's available on Walmart. It's available at Target. It's available at Barnes and Noble. However, this is probably like my favorite part. You can go to patrickhickeyjr.com and you can click on the link, like the minds behind the games, and you can order the book directly through me. And what I will do is I will sign it. I will like write something in there for you, and like you order it through like PayPal or like your credit card or whatever. And obviously, I'm gonna have to ship the book out to you. So, and I'm gonna have your email address, because it's gonna like email me. It's gonna email you the receipt and stuff like that. So whenever someone orders the book from me, they get shocked because I'm gonna contact you and be like, thank you. And then I'm going to start a conversation with you and be like, what are you into? Like, and like, I'm going to see where you're from. So like I had somebody that was from Pittsburgh. So I threw a couple like Pittsburgh Penguins hockey cards in their book. And when they got the book, they were like, dude, like there was a Yarmer Yager in there. I'm like, yeah, it was a little bent up, but like what, like just something to create a connection with the reader, So like if they tell me like some of their favorite games, like I'll make like like when I write inside their book, I'll make a reference to like one of their games and stuff. Like put some like tender love and care. So like they have a book that like they'll enjoy reading, but it's also like a one of a kind item that like means something to them. So I've been to way too many book signings where like the author is just like, yeah, sign it, next. And like whenever I speak at panels and video game conventions or I do a signing and stuff, sometimes people get pissed off, but I like to spend a couple of minutes with everybody. The book is $40. It's a lot of money for a book. You can go out and buy a video game for that. So the thing is, like, if you're going to spend the money, then I've got to make it worth your while. And like what I like to tell people is like, it's 36 chapters. So it's like for like $1.30, you're getting like a behind the scenes story of one video game, and you're getting a story that like you could tell in a video game store, and you're getting a story that you could tell your friends and stuff like that. And I've even had women come over to me that aren't into video games that they're like, I bought your book and I read it, and like my boyfriend doesn't know nearly as much about video games as me now, and like he's wondering like how I found out all this information. So then I just gave him the book and now he loves it and I can't get it back. Like that's what I want. I want to create conversations between people. So if you order the book from me, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to like make it a one of a kind item for you. It's also available digitally too. So it's $40 in print, but it's half that digitally. So if you read on your iPhone or your Android or your what's it called, your
Kindle,
your Kindle, it's available on Kindle as well. Then you can take it with you wherever you want. Like I've had people email me and say, "Oh, I read it on the beach," and I'm like, "You took the book to the beach?" And they're like, "No, I have it on Kindle." I'm like, "That's awesome," So if you're like a newbie, if you're a millennial and you don't, because millennials don't buy paper books, they don't do it. Buy the Kindle version, enjoy it. But like I've had people. It's affected me so much where like we had a huge sale. Like a couple months ago, like when the summer just happened, we had a digital sale where like the Kindle version was like $4 for like 3 days, and we sold hundreds of copies. But like I had people that bought the print version, and they're like, "Yo, I want the digital version too, because now I could take it with me and I won't mess up the book." I'm like, "No, mess up the book, like bend the pages, like like that's like my favorite thing. Like when people show me their books and they're all beat up, I'm like, that's awesome because now I know that you read it." So to answer your question, I know I'm long-winded. Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Target, Walmart, and patrickhickeyjr.com.
which like I know you're apologizing for being long-winded, but like Patrick, you're an author that actually cares about his audience. You want them to invest. You want to find something they love. You want your content to be that, but it's not because you just want to make money. It's because you want to like spread the word about other people. Like your book, I love that it's spreading compassion on other people and like of the comic, or not the comic book, but the content creators and the game creators that you've interviewed with. You're spreading the love for them, and like that kind of makes you care about your audience more because you're like, hey, I love you people, go love these people too.
Yes.
And guys, definitely go check out this book. I'm so like, so this podcast was great. It was also a podcast for me because I got to hear all these cool stories and like it's amazing because it's content for you, but it's also content for me. I was kind of in awe of all these stories. There's more of this in the book, right, Patrick?
Yeah,
like,
this is just like the tip of the iceberg. Like every single chapter has like at least 2 stories in there where you're gonna be like, what? Like that happened? Like wow. And it's like it could be silly stuff from like developers fighting amongst each other, but it's like other things of like developers living on royalties, like taking out royalties against the game and having to live in a hotel to finish their game on time and not knowing that if the game doesn't sell, they're screwed. You know, they could be homeless. You know, and we're talking about like these are games that like millions of people ended up buying. Like every single chapter, each of these games almost got canceled at one point, like games that you could never ever imagine, you know, and some of them faced like hardcore limitations and they just made lemonade, you know, and like even like the game Bully that's in the first book. I love that game. It's a great game, but it was almost canceled before it came out because all these Christian activist groups found out that like there's a male and male kiss in the game. It's like, who cares? You know, but they tried to like get the game banned before it came out. And like, if you've played Bully, it's a celebration of what it's like to be a 14 or 15-year-old kid in a new school and not know what the hell is going on. That like, yeah, you can kiss guys in the game, but you can kiss girls too, just like a 14 or 15-year-old boy can. Like when you're 14, 15, you're discovering like, am I going to kiss guys or am I going to kiss girls or am I going to kiss goats or am I not going to kiss anybody, you know? And like Bully was a great game because it made you feel like that. And it almost never came out because of all of these activist groups. So like I said, every single chapter, there's a story where you can go to people and be like, I'm smarter than you, you know, because I know this. Like I didn't just play the game, but I know this. And it'll make you appreciate these games even more. And that's the point.
and guys, so all these stories went over. There's a butt ton of stories that have happened in this podcast. If none of those pique your interest, something's wrong with you. You need to go buy this book because there's honestly probably 100 more stories that you're going to be like, wow, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. Hey, did you hear about this? Like, go tell other people. So go read this book. Like Patrick is an awesome guest. He's an awesome content creator. He's a man of many talents. Go support him. Like do it. Just go do it. Patrick, thank you so much for not only just advertising your book, but like getting me hooked on video games again. Like that's what it's about. Like learning more about these video games, and that's what hopefully people find in our podcast, like comedy, but also finding out about games. And like this has been the truest form of just finding out and loving games and having a good laugh. Like that. This episode was just our podcast. Like I love it. I loved it so much. That's what I want us to be. And thank you for just your time and just being so genuine with us.
No problem, man. Anytime. And I'd love to be on again when these games start. When I told you, there's a lot of announcements and things I can't talk about right now. So like when these things start to hit, I would love to be on again. And like I said, after the podcast is over, I'll send some codes your way so you guys could play the Padre and have some fun. That's what it's about. It's about building horizontally. It's like everybody, like when they want to be a success, they go to somebody that has like 10 million followers on Twitter and they're like, help me, please, blah, blah, blah. And those people don't care. They don't want to help you. You know, so like it's for me, like when I want to be on a podcast, I don't like necessarily like even look at how many followers that people have. I listen to them and I say, oh, these guys do good work. Let me help them because they're going to help me. And if more people did that, I think everyone would be a lot more successful. So thank you guys for giving me an outlet to talk about my book and my work in journalism and voice acting. So, to all of us, like onward and forward, you know, that's all we got to do. Like I said in the beginning, you got to try. And that's what we just did for an hour and a half, you know?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was an amazing, like just trying at it. And like, man, I don't have to say our normal tagline, like our normal tagline is hopefully this episode's been better than static. I freaking know this episode was better than Static.
So I'm happy to be a part of that. So,
yeah,
thank
we're
you.
happy that you're a part of it. Guys, go check out go check out the games that Patrick's working on. Padre's in beta. You can play it on Steam, correct?
Yeah, it's in early access. It's like 95% finished. So like right now we're just finding and killing all the bugs in the game right now. But like it's fully voice acted. It'll take you like 6 hours to beat. It's an old school like survival like horror like point and click adventure. So there's gonna be points in the game where you're super stuck, and there's like really no tutorials in the game. So it's super old school. It's a lot of fun. We have a Discord channel. If you go on there, you can always talk to the developers. That's the thing too. If you want to be a journalist, or you want to work in the video game industry, go on Discord. You know, you can get firsthand access to all the people that make these games, and you can find out like what makes them tick. So if you go on the Padre Discord, I'm always on there doing stupid videos and stuff like that. I'll take a walk to like Dunkin' Donuts and start talking in the Padre voice and stuff like that. And so yeah, just go on there. It's on Steam right now, the Padre. Play it, have some fun, and be honest. Like if there's something that you don't like about the game, we're still actively developing it. So who knows? Like one of the changes you suggest could get into the game. And I know Pro Wrestling X is in the same situation. People suggest things all the time for that game. Like I helped animate a roaring elbow in that game because I was like, oh, a roaring elbow should totally be in that game. It's great. And the developer Dave Wisnowski is like, oh, well, what do you want it to look like? So I start sending them clips, and all of a sudden I helped animate a move that got into the game. So that's the thing. If you guys want to do this, just do it. And it's so cliche. It's so Nike, right? Just do it, right? But seriously, like if these are the things that you guys want to do, just do it. All the time I say to myself, why me? Like, why do I get to hear these amazing stories from these people? And it's because I tried. You know, I reached out to them and they saw that I was genuine and that this is what I wanted to do. So that's what you guys have to do. If this is what you want to do, this podcast or like just life in general, just freaking do it. Just go kill it.
Yeah. And guys, you guys go check out Padre. You go check out reviewfix.com. You go check out the minds behind the games. Because here's the thing. You know, you're supporting Patrick, but also you're supporting yourself. Because if you have any interest, any like hint that you might want to do content creation or do journalism or do voice acting, this is like a plethora of information to help you get it started. So this is like the first step of actually going and doing it. So, you know, go do it. Patrick, thank you so much again for being on the show. Lucas, thank you for always doing the show with me. Guys, thanks for sticking around. We'll catch you next week. This episode's been better than Static, so.
If I find my way home, yeah.
If you like video games, debates, and silly banter, you'll love Gamerheads Podcast.
Outside of your store, because I do feel like your store knows its identity. I do. I think that you guys know what you are. No?
Not always.
Really?
He sells fidget spinners.
Well,
Not anymore.
I mean, for a while. but-
not
I mean,
anymore.
Not,
We were
that Matt.
experimenting
not
with our
anymore.
That's what I'm saying, though. You were just experimenting. Like,
golf was made by a Japanese guy.
Yeah,
yeah. Go Iwata.
yeah.
Oh, the game.
Yeah, not the
Okay.
sport.
Yeah.
Okay, I was
Yeah.
like, huh.
Well, speaking of Nintendo.
Follow Gamerheads on Podbean at gamerheadspodcast.podbean.com.